Good evening, everyone. We'll get started here in just a moment. I see a few more people are still logging in, but thank you all for joining us here tonight. Again, I'll give it about 30 seconds and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, great. So it looks like everyone is now on, and so I'll go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you for joining us here tonight. I do want to just give you a quick heads up on what we'll be talking about tonight. And so essentially what we'll be looking at is in our process of mastering Microsoft Excel. Tonight, we're going to give you some quick and simple Excel tips that can really help you both in your careers and even if you have some side things going on from a personal standpoint in your side business or things like that. And so really just some things that can really help save you time. That's what we're going to be focusing on tonight. By way of introduction, my name is Ryan Hirsch, and I serve as Senior Director and Head of Market Development here at Surgent Exam Review. And one of the things that I do want to make you all aware of is that we do have an Excel Critical Skills Certificate course. That's a program I've actually completed. That one is a full 8-hour course that has the exams that are included in it. But this is something that can really be a good resume booster as you're applying for jobs or even just looking to get a promotion at your existing company. So I do want to make you aware of that. And I also, towards the end of the presentation, I will give you a discount code to be able to get $100 off that course. So it normally goes for $149, and I'll give you a discount code that can make it available for just $49. So that's one thing that I did want to make you all aware of. For tonight, what we're going to do is pull some elements out of that course just to give you kind of a preview to show you some tips that you can apply today that will really help you in your accounting careers. Okay, so again, what we're talking about is Excel, and we're focusing specifically on accounting and finance professionals. So there's a lot that you can do with Excel, and so that's why tonight we're just going to focus specifically on the accounting and finance side of things and show you some quick time-saving tools there. From an overview standpoint, the things we're going to focus on tonight are some of the control and shortcut keys. We're also going to focus on the sum versus subtotal function, and we're going to explain a little bit about what instances you would use those particular functions and why one is better than the other for a lot of things that you're working on. Then we're also going to look at outlines, because with outlines, when you apply that in Excel, it allows you to take a lot of data, but basically have it roll up and basically collapse it into certain rows so that if you're trying to present a large amount of data, you can show it concisely. And then if someone wants to see details, they can expand it and see more later. And then from there, we'll also talk about tables and filters. One of the things that you want to be able to do, one of the real benefits of utilizing Microsoft Excel is that it allows you to manipulate the data and do a lot of things. And so the tables and filters give you a quick, easy way to do a lot of those features and filters that you want to apply there. And then we'll also show you some things about the fill down method that really make it easier to apply various formulas to multiple cells without typing that formula into each individual cell. So from a shortcut standpoint, I'm not going to focus on these a lot right now because I'm actually going to go through it when we log in to Excel, and because I'm just giving you a preview right now, but we're actually going to go into Excel and walk you through how to do some of these things. But we'll show you some of the basics of how the arrow keys work. Then we'll focus on how you can extend a selection across multiple cells. Then we'll show you how to jump to the end of a data region or select all the cells within a data region, and also show you how to jump from one tab within a spreadsheet to another. Now, just a quick preview on the subtotal function where we talked about using the sum function versus the subtotal function. So one of the things that we'll do, this is an example of what you would see with the subtotal function. All of our functions that we start with in Excel are going to start with an equal sign. And then this one is equals subtotal, and then you type the number 9 and a comma, And then this C10 colon C12, that is just in reference to which particular cells we're referencing in this particular equation. So again, this will make a lot more sense once we log into Excel, but just wanted to give you a preview of that. Now, one of the big things with the subtotal function is that it has exclusion rules. So one of the challenges that we face sometimes is that we can accidentally double count some of the numbers in our tables and in our data regions. And so this is something that's going to help you prevent yourself from doing that. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about that again as we actually get into the platform. Some of this other information, again, we'll talk about live in Excel, but just kind of giving you a preview of what we're going to be focusing on. Okay, one other thing that I want to let you know before we get into Excel, if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email me. Again, my name is Ryan Hirsch, and my email address is hirschr@surgent.com. I'm also going to type this in the chat section as well. And as it relates to the chat section, that is also a place you can either use the chat section or the Q&A feature in order to ask questions throughout this presentation. So if I see them in real time, I'll be glad to answer them in the moment. But if not, we will definitely make time for questions and answers towards the end of the presentation as well. So feel free to utilize either one of those options, the chat box or the question and answer box, and I'll be glad to answer questions from there. Okay, so from here, we'll go ahead and get right into Excel. So what I have here is a sample balance sheet, just kind of a simple balance sheet, and I have 3 different columns here. So one, this is the one we're going to be working out of just to kind of do our work from scratch. This is a completed table that's using the sum method, that's using the sum method. And then this one is a completed table using the subtotal method. And so I'm going to show you, even though they look the same on the surface, I'll show you some of the key differences. Okay, so one of the things that we have here is that initially we're starting off with a few items on our balance sheet. But one of the things that we have is that these 3 totals for furniture and fixtures, machinery and equipment, and computer equipment, we want to lump all of these together. And so we want to find out what is the subtotal of these 3 line items. And so when we add those up, or excuse me, let me go ahead and show you what that would be like. When we add those up, typically one of the things we would do is highlight these cells, and then we would go up here to the sum button and just click that, and it would give us our total there. That would give us our subtotal. So when I click on it, it shows that we're basically using the sum function. And so that's what it's giving us there. Now, what we're going to do is go ahead and now we want to add up all of the information in this column. So we're going to do the same thing and hit the sum button. And it looks like we didn't capture all the data there. So we're just going to extend that. Okay, so now it gives us our grand total, but there's a problem. This is actually not the correct answer. So 866,000 is not correct. And so what's happening here when we use the sum function to add everything up is that it's double counting this 305,000 figure because it's adding up row 13, but it's also including the figures for row 10, 11, and 12. And so we're basically double counting that and getting about 610,000 for these 4 rows instead of 305,000. And so that's a problem. And so we need to figure out how can we fix that. So one of the things that we can do is figure out a different way to add it up. So for example, it seems like everything is working fine using the sum total there. So that just means down here, we need to change how we're adding this up. So I'm going to type in the equal sign, and then I'm going to add cell C6. Then I'm going to click the plus button. We'll add C7, click the plus button. And now I'm going to just skip down here and add this subtotal of 305 just by clicking it. And then I'm going to hit the plus button one more time and add this 70,000. And then I'll click enter to complete my formula. And it gives me the correct total of 560,000. And so that is one way that you could do it. However, it does have some challenges. So this section over here, this is using the sum method. So again, you see the sum there. And then here, it's just like we just did a second ago, where we're adding all these categories or all these cells up individually to make sure we're not double counting the information. However, let's say you're using these particular spreadsheets over multiple months. And so this month we just had cash and cash receive or accounts receivable. But now we've also added gold into the equation. And so let's go ahead and add $15,000 for gold. Click enter, and we have a problem here because it did not show up in our total assets here. And so what's happening is, because we just selected individual cells, when we add something else or change something in our data region, it does not get included because we're not including everything within the data region. So that's problematic for us. And so we need to figure out, how can we avoid that? Well, in order to make sure that this 15,000 is counted, here's what we're going to do. First, let me delete everything that we have here, and I'm going to start over. And this time, instead of using the sum method, I'm actually going to use the subtotal function. And so what I'll do is select equals to start our function. Then I'm going to start typing the word subtotal. And there's a feature in Excel called IntelliSense that's going to help predict what I'm actually trying to type next. And so even if you don't remember the formulas completely and you don't have everything memorized, you can just start typing it, and Excel is actually going to help you complete it. So now I'll start typing subtotal. And there I typed SUB, and it's letting me know there are three formulas that you're likely trying to work on or implement. And so it's either substitute, and then look over here, it gives me an explanation of what that is. Replaces existing text with new text in a text string. Or maybe I want to do subtotal, and it returns a subtotal in a list or a database. And so that's the one we want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and double click that. So now it goes ahead and puts in subtotal, and then it gives me a list of several numbers. Now, what we have here is that we want to use the sum function of the subtotal function. And so what that means is, I want to go ahead and add up the sum of the numbers in my region. So I'm going to click the number 9, and that's what this is here. Number 9 is the sum function of the subtotal function. So I'm going to click this, and it adds that 9 there. Then we're going to, and notice here underneath it, it gives me the formula. It says type subtotal, type in which function number you want, which is 9, and then here, put in the cells that you're referencing. So I'm going to type a comma, and then I'm going to highlight the cells that I want to get the subtotal of. So I'll add this. So I have those three cells, C10 through C12. I close it with a parentheses, and then I'm going to click enter. So now I have my 305,285, which is the correct total, but I'm using the subtotal function instead of the sum function. Now, you may be thinking, well, that doesn't seem like it was much more efficient than what we were doing earlier just by using the sum function. But here's where it starts to help you. When I want to add up all of these items here, now I can go down to total assets, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'll do subtotal, number 9. I'll put a comma, and now I'm going to highlight all of the cells within this data region. And I will close it with the parentheses, click enter, and now I get the correct total there for my total assets, because the subtotal function has exclusion rules. So when I click this, I can see that even though I have all of this data highlighted, what's happening is the subtotal function excludes previous subtotals within your data set. So this 305,000 on row 13 is not being counted in my grand total. It's only counting rows 10, 11, and 12 because this row 13 is being excluded. So that's the benefit of using the subtotal function, is that it has those exclusion rules. Now, over here, this one is also using the subtotal function as well. So remember when we tried to add gold for 15,000, but because it was not one of the pre-selected cells, it was not showing up in our total assets. Well, now over here with subtotal, it's including everything within this data region except this subtotal here on row 13. And so that means that when I add $15,000 for gold, watch this number here, this 560. Once I click enter here, it's going to change and update to 575 because now this 15,000 is already included in my data set because it's including everything in here except previous subtotals. And so again, that is something that will really help you increase your accuracy and prevent you from double counting as you are working on these types of spreadsheets. So that's one thing that I want to share with you there. Now, another thing that may be helpful to you is the concept of using outlines. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you. Okay, so here we have a few different expenses in our budget. And so we've got some sales and marketing expenses, which total about $4.5 million. Accounting and finance expenses are about $631,000. Operations are about $8.9 million. And that leaves us with a total for the company of about $14 million. And so we've already got our subtotal there, adding all that up. But this is what we're looking at. Now, this is a sample sheet of expenses, but sometimes, as you know, when we're working in Excel, we may be dealing with a lot of rows of data. So right now we've only got about 20 rows of data approximately, but there are some spreadsheets that I know I work in that have hundreds and sometimes even thousands of rows of data. And so if I'm going in to try to show, let's say I'm showing my boss what our what our expenses are, I can't walk in with a spreadsheet that highlights or shows, hundreds or thousands of rows of data. They want you to be able to put that in a concise format that is quickly and easily available for them to view. And so we got to figure out how can we work on that. And so before I show you that, I do want to let you know there was one question that came in. Someone wanted to know, will there be a recording of this afterwards? And absolutely, we are recording this and we will make sure that we send this out to you tomorrow. So we will definitely include the recording as well as the PowerPoint. We'll make sure we email that to all of you. So if we want to figure out how can we present this information in a more concise manner, we want to utilize outlines. And so what we're going to do is go up here to data. So in our toolbar, we're going to go up here and select data. So I've clicked that and notice everything in here changes. And then look at this button here that says group. This is the one we're going to be using. And so what I want to do is group some of these categories together. So for example, I'm going to highlight rows 7 through 10, and I want to group those together. So I'm going to click group. And so now notice this little minus button here. If I click minus, it takes those away, it collapses all of those, and I'm just left with the sales and marketing total. So I'm going to do the same thing for these remaining sections, just so you can see it again. I'm going to highlight, and I'm just clicking on the actual row number over here. Click on 13, drag it down to row 16, then click group, and it's added there for you again. Going to do the same thing here, 19 through 22, click group. And so now you can see that we can quickly show, even if we had hundreds of thousands of rows in here, we could quickly show them, look, here's how we're operating. Here's what our expenses are, with sales and marketing, with accounting and finance, and with operations, as well as our total. Now, one thing that you can do is, if your boss is saying, well, hey, I don't understand why operations is why we're spending $8.9 million on operations. What's going on there? You can say, okay, well, let me drill down and show you what we're actually spending that money on. 6.8 for operations, 1.5 on R&D, and then 500 grand for the warehouse. And so you can quickly answer those questions. The reason that's important is because earlier in my career, I've always loved data. I've always loved information. but I would present information overload. I was so fascinated with the data that I would go in there and I wanted to be prepared. And so anytime someone had a question about the information I was presenting, I wanted it right there at my fingertips. And so I was including all of this extra information, which was important, but not everyone wants to see that in the moment. And so being able to collapse this type of, these types of cells and just show the high level roll up and then wait for the question. If someone asks to see more details, then you can click on it and explain it. So that's one thing to highlight there. Now, you can also look up at these buttons that say number 1 and number 2. And basically there, you can either expand all of the rows at once. So here, when I click 2, all of these expanded. Or if I want to collapse everything in one keystroke, then I can do that there as well. If for whatever reason you did this and then you said, you know what, actually, I don't want to keep those roll-ups, you can just highlight everything and click ungroup, and it takes it back to normal. So that's how you would utilize the outlines. But this has really been helpful to me in my career, and probably more so helpful to other people that I work with, so that they don't have to see all of the background data, but I have it there if I need it. And so that's something that's really been beneficial. Okay, so we are going to move on to shortcuts now. And so from an arrow key standpoint, some of these are going to start out pretty basic, you probably already know, but you'll have the your basic arrow keys on your keyboard, and so you use those to go, side to side, down, up, all those sorts of things, just with your basic arrow keys. Now, when I generally find this most helpful is when I am traveling and on the road. Obviously, we're not doing quite as much traveling right now, given what's going on with COVID-19. However, when you're on your laptop, maybe even if you're working on your couch, you're not at a dedicated desk, if you don't have a mouse readily available, then these shortcuts can be really helpful for you. So you start out with just your basic arrow keys. And then the next thing is we want to look at, again, remember, we may not always have just 5 or 6 columns here. Sometimes we have these long spreadsheets. And so we got to figure out, how can we move about this particular spreadsheet without going down here and dragging that to go there. So one of the things that you can do is you can hold down the shift key. So you hold down shift and then just click one of the arrows. So there I'm clicking the right arrow, and it is basically highlighting everything that's over to the right. If I click the left arrow, it's going to bring it back. If I click the down arrow, it will go down, and then I want to go to the right again, it'll click all of that. So that's how I can highlight certain pieces of data. One other thing that I forgot to mention, we will also, in addition to the recording and the PowerPoint, I will also send you a copy of this Excel spreadsheet so that you can play around with it as well, and kind of test this out for yourself. But I will make sure you get a copy of this as well. So that's one thing that you can do with that type of shortcut. The other thing that you can do is use, if you hold down the control key on your keyboard, hold down control, and then use the arrow keys again, and it will jump you to the end of a data region. So notice I'm going from side to side here. I'm going from this first column all the way over to the last column in my data set. If I want to go down here to 986 to column F18, I can just hold control and hit the down arrow, and instantly it takes me down there. Now, let's say that I wanted to do multiple things. So I can hold down shift and control at the same time. And then when I hit my right arrow key, it's going to highlight the entire row. When I hit the down key, it's going to highlight everything below. Oh, excuse me, I hit the wrong button. Sorry about that. So when I hit shift and control, hit the side arrow, and then when I hit the down key, it's going to highlight everything below that. And so you can go hit the left arrow, it'll take you here, hit the right arrow, it takes you back, hit the up arrow, it's just going to have that top one. So those are some different ways that you can just do some quick shortcuts to move around in your spreadsheet a little bit. Okay, now we're going to look at the fill down method. So one of the things that we have here is, let's say you worked for a car dealership in the accounting department for a car dealership or anything that was related to sales. So you have the transaction ID number here in this first column. You have the sales rep listed here. You have the region that it was sold in listed there. You have the item name or number or product number there. You have the actual cost of the item. So how much revenue did your company get here? What was the commission rate that you were paying to your salespeople? And then what's the actual dollar amount for the commission that's being paid? So you can have this information here. And one of the things that you may want to do is say, okay, we want to figure out what is the actual dollar amount of the commission that is being paid for each of these transactions. And so here we've already entered in just a simple formula, and we typed equals, and then we highlighted this first cell for the amount, and then we did an asterisk because that basically means multiply. And so we're doing this cell times 6%, which is G7. This is cell G7. And then when we click enter, that tells us that the commission that we're paying on this transaction is $32.46. Well, even though it doesn't take a long time to type in that formula, I don't want to do that for every single row that I have here. Again, you might have 1,000 rows in your particular spreadsheet. So one of the things that you can do is just click this box here, and then you'll notice there's a little square on the right bottom or the lower right corner of this box. And so what I can do is click that, and I'm just going to drag it. I'm going to hold it down and drag it all the way to the end of my data region. And when I let go, it instantly applies that same formula to all of these other cells. So here, it's already saying 4,086 times 6%, and it gives me what that total is. So that's one thing that you can do to quickly be able to get that information. Now, as I reminded you though, you may have 1,000 different rows of data. So sometimes it's not fun to click this and just drag it down, and your spreadsheet keeps going, you keep scrolling, and scrolling. And so that isn't always fun to do. So if you don't want to necessarily do it that way, then what you could also do is click on your cell and then go to that same square, but this time you're just going to double click on it. So go ahead and just double click on that square. And again, it instantly adds all of those formulas to those cells for you so that you can quickly add that information up. So that's one thing that can be really helpful for you. Now, another thing that you can do is you can basically, we talked about that subtotal function earlier. So if I want to find out, how much commissions are we actually paying here? Let's go ahead and do our subtotal 9. Let's add our data set in here, close the parentheses, and we have that total there. We want to find out what was our total revenue. How much did we sell? We can apply the same thing here, subtotal 9, and we'll add our data set, close the parentheses, and click enter. And so now we know that this is the total amount that we sold. Now, I'm going to show you something over here, which is how you create a finished table. So we've got this information here. This is very helpful, but again, it's all about when you're utilizing Excel, what makes this better than just having this on a sheet of paper is when you have this on paper, it's just a stagnant piece of data. But there's a lot of extra things that you can do in Excel. So the first thing we're going to do is just create a very simple table. So I'm going to highlight everything here. So I'm highlighting my cell, and then I'm going to go back to the home section, or I'm sorry, I'm going to go to insert rather. And then here, there's an option to insert a table. And so that's what we're going to do. We're just going to click table. Right now it's showing me, it's saying, is this the actual data region that you want to highlight? It's basically highlighting everything that's in this dash box here. And I'm saying, yes, that is correct. So I click OK. And so now it automatically puts this information in a table. So why is a table helpful? Well, one of the things that a table can do is it can help you sort things. So if I want to see okay, let's go ahead and sort this by, I want to know which transactions were the largest. So here I can just click on this arrow for the amount, and I can easily sort it from largest to smallest. And so there it's instantly updated all of my information. So I know that person 3 had the largest sale and we gave them the largest commission. I can also update this to say, you know what I really want to figure out is I don't want to see everybody's information, but I'm really proud of person 3 there. I want to see how many total sales does person 3 have. So what I can do is click on this arrow and go down here to our filters. And instead of, selecting all, right now, I forgot which person I said I wanted to look at. I think it was person 3. But anyway, we'll go ahead and click person 3 here. We'll click OK. And now it's just showing me the sales for person 3. But notice what happened here as well. It has consolidated our totals. And so now I'm only seeing the revenue total for person 3, as well as how much commission we're paying to person 3. I can add another person in there. So maybe person 3 and person 5 are working together. So I'm going to say, okay, let's add person 5 in there. Now I can see just what the two of them did together. So that's one thing that you can do there. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and select all again. So now it takes me back to my full data set. And maybe again, I just want to see, we divided our sales territories up into East and West. And so let's just see what people are doing in the East. And again, I can see that, about $18,000 worth of our business is coming from our East Coast reps. And if I want to see the West, I just switch it and it's actually about even. So almost 18,000 for our West as well. So that lets me see a number of different things. The other thing that I can do is maybe there's a specific product. And so I'm just looking to see, AC200, that product, I want to see how that's selling. So now I'm going to, instead of selecting all, I just want to see AC200. And I can see that I've sold about almost $15,000 worth of my came from that one product. And so I can see that that's selling really well. And so that's just a couple of quick things that you can do when you're utilizing tables. So wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that as well. So now I'm just going to go and basically clear these filters and bring everything back. So in a nutshell, that is just, those are a few quick tips for some shortcuts that you can utilize when you're using Excel in your day-to-day jobs or however you're using Excel. So I hope you found that helpful. Right now, I'm going to pause and just see if you have any questions that you'd like me to answer. So I'll just take a second. Again, there's a chat section as well as a Q&A box. And so feel free to utilize those to ask questions. The other thing I'm going to do while you're thinking, if you have any questions, I am going to go ahead and type in the promo code. So if you are interested in the Excel course, I'm going to give you a promo code for it. So the promo code for that particular course is going to be 49XL20. So I will go ahead and type this in here. And one thing, I'm typing this in here, but we are also going to include the link to the actual course as well as the promo code. I'll make sure we include that in the follow-up email that we send you as well. And so we'll make sure we have that for you. So even if you don't write it down now, you will get that tomorrow. Someone asked about VLOOKUP. We can cover VLOOKUP, but I don't have the data preset. I've already set up some particular tabs. And so I don't have the one that I typically use to show people how to utilize VLOOKUP as well as possible. However, one thing I will say is if you want, go ahead and send me an email and I'll be glad to connect you with some resources that can show you that pretty quickly. So I think you should have in the chat section, you should have my email. I'm going to type it one more time Just depend. I'm not sure when you joined, but just in case, I'm going to go ahead and type that here. And so go ahead and send me an email, and I'll definitely connect you with that information. Absolutely. Okay. Are there any other questions at the moment? Okay, well, I don't see any at the moment, and so I'll go ahead and log off now. One thing I will let you know is that if you are interested in learning more about pivot tables and how to create dashboards and things of that nature, we do have another advanced webinar that's coming up. And actually, one of the things we are going to include, we will include VLOOKUP in the next version of that advanced Excel workshop. And so if you are interested in that, that's another option for you as well. It's just in the same registration area as where you signed up for this webinar. And so if you have any interest in that, I would encourage you to sign up for that. I believe, I don't remember the exact date, but I think it's towards the middle of September, maybe around September 16th or so, somewhere around there. But feel free to sign up for that if you have any interest there as well. So again, I hope you found this helpful. But if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via email, and I'll certainly be glad to help. So with that, have a great rest of your evening, and I wish you the best.